Cindy believed in fairy tales because she was living one. Her marriage to Alex was filled with laughter, breakfasts in bed weekend, movie marathons, and whispered dreams under starry skies. They had been together for 6 years and married for 3. Their modest home was filled with memories, soft-colored walls and photographs capturing every adventure. It was simple, but it was enough. Alex was the type of man who once couldn't go a day without holding Cindy's hand. He would leave notes on the fridge, reminding her to smile or slip a daisy into her book just to see her eyes light up. Cindy, who worked as an interior designer, felt supported and adored. Their life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful and warm. Everything started to change when Mia entered the picture. She was new at Alex's workplace, a marketing specialist with striking beauty and a magnetic presence. Cindy met her once at a company party. Mia wore a red dress too tight for comfort and a smile that lingered too long when she greeted Alex. At the time, Cindy brushed off her instincts, blaming her discomfort on jealousy. Mia made herself known quickly. She became Alex's work buddy. Late hours led to late-night texts. Cindy noticed the shift. Alex began staying out later. His kisses grew shorter. His phone never left his side. But whenever Cindy brought it up, Alex would laugh it off, accusing her of being paranoid. He was just busy, work was hectic. Mia was just a friend. Then the headache started. The fatigue came next. Cindy thought she was just tired, stressed maybe. She pushed herself, ignored the symptoms. Until one morning, she collapsed while preparing breakfast. Alex rushed her to the hospital, his hands trembling. As he held hers in the ER, they both waited nervously as the tests were done. The diagnosis hit like a freight train. Stage 3 breast cancer. Cindy stared blankly at the doctor, unable to process the words. Alex went pale, silent, gripping her hand tighter. But that grip would loosen sooner than she could imagine. The next few weeks were a blur of hospital visits, chemotherapy, and endless pain. Cindy's body weakened, but her spirit tried to stay strong. She shaved her head before the chemo took her hair. Alex avoided her eyes when she did. He started sleeping on the couch, claiming he didn't want to disturb her rest. Cindy noticed how Mia's name appeared more frequently. Mia sent food. Mia offered to help. Mia called every evening to check on Alex. It was no longer subtle. It was creeping into their home, like a shadow Cindy couldn't escape. One evening, she found a message on Alex's phone, a photo of Mia in lingerie, captioned with something that made her stomach twist. She didn't cry. She couldn't. Her body was too tired, her soul too worn out. When she confronted Alex, he didn't deny it. He simply stared at her with hollow eyes and said he didn't know how to do this anymore. Do what? Cindy asked, her voice shaking. Watch you waste away, he replied. The words shattered her. He packed his bags a week later and left. No goodbyes, no apologies, just silence. Mia was waiting in the car. Cindy sat alone on the floor that night, her bald head resting against the cold wall of the living room. Her heart was broken, but more than that, she felt abandoned, betrayed by the one person she thought would stand by her through everything. She could have given up. Part of her wanted to, but something inside her whispered not yet. Cindy spent the next few days in numb silence. The house felt empty without Alex. His shoes no longer cluttered the hallway. The scent of his cologne was gone from the bedroom. It was just her now, and the echo of what used to be love. Every corner of the house was a reminder of his absence and of her illness. Chemotherapy became lonelier. She sat through the sessions alone, headphones in ears, eyes shut tight, pretending not to notice the pity in the nurses' faces. Other patients were accompanied by family or spouses. Cindy showed up in silence, left in silence. The world had moved on without her. Even the neighbors who once waved now avoided eye contact. One day after another, brutal treatment, Cindy returned home and stood in front of the mirror. Her skin had lost its glow. Her body was thin, her face pale. She looked like a ghost of the woman she used to be. And yet in her eyes, there was a flicker, something small, but fierce. A spark not entirely extinguished. She remembered her mother's words from childhood. "When the world turns its back on you, stand up anyway." She repeated those words out loud, her voice soft but steady. She couldn't control the cancer or Alex leaving, but she could control how she responded. It started small. She began walking every morning, even if her body protested. At first, she only made it to the mailbox and back. Then a few houses down. Then around the block. She downloaded a meditation app and listened to affirmations while lying in bed. She began journaling, writing letters to herself. Letters of pain and hope and fire. One day, while browsing old photos, she found a picture from her early 20s. She was smiling in a sundress, standing barefoot in a field. Her hair was long, her face radiant. That woman still existed somewhere inside her. Cindy placed the photo on her fridge and made herself a promise. She would find that woman again, or rebuild her if she had to. She joined a local cancer support group. At first, she barely spoke, sitting in the back, listening to others share their stories. But over time, she began to talk. She met people who had lost more than she had and still smiled. She heard stories of recovery, of strength and weakness. It reminded her that she wasn't alone, even when it felt like it. One afternoon, she walked past a boutique and saw a mannequin wearing a sleek black wig. She paused, staring at it. Impulsively, she stepped inside. The clerk smiled gently, as if sensing the reason for her visit. Cindy tried on the wig and stared at herself in the mirror. It wasn't her old self, but it wasn't a victim either. It was a new version, someone rising from the ashes. That same week, she began experimenting with makeup, not to hide, but to reclaim. She watched tutorials, learned how to draw bold eyebrows, how to contour her cheeks. It was tiring at first, but with every stroke of eyeliner, she felt herself taking back control. She bought a dress, a red one, just like the kind Mia wore. Except this time, it wasn't for anyone else's approval. It was for her. When she posted a photo of herself on social media, for the first time in months, the comments poured in. Old friends reached out, shocked by her transformation. "You look incredible," one said. "You're glowing," said another. Cindy didn't reply, but she smiled. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't just surviving. She was starting to fight back. And in a distant part of the city, in a sleek apartment filled with the designer furniture, Alex scrolled through his feed and stopped at the photo. His heart skipped. For a moment, he couldn't breathe. Mia walked into the room and asked what he was looking at, but he locked his phone and shook his head. Cindy was rising, and Alex could feel it. Cindy began waking up earlier than she used to. Mornings were no longer grey voids filled with dread, but moments of quiet clarity. Her day started with green tea, soft instrumental music, and a list of goals, handwritten on a notepad beside her bed. They weren't grand things. Walk 30 minutes, read 2 chapters, practice smiling in the mirror, heal. Her oncologist noticed the change too. Though the treatments were still brutal, Cindy's response was improving. Her body began to show signs of resilience. Her blood count stabilized. The fatigue was still there, but the spark in her eyes grew brighter with each visit. One day after an appointment, Cindy walked by a gym. She stood at the door, watching the people inside lift weights, sweat running down their temples, expressions focused and determined. She felt something stir inside. Not envy, not longing. It was hunger. She stepped in and asked to speak with the trainer. The trainer was kind. His name was Luis, and he had worked with cancer survivors before. He didn't treat her like she was fragile. Instead, he asked her what she wanted to become. Strong, Cindy replied. Not skinny, not perfect. Just strong. She started with light exercises, slow movements that reminded her she still had control over her limbs. Every muscle ache felt like a message from her body. I'm still here, I still work. Cindy's physical transformation wasn't overnight. It was carved slowly through pain, discipline, and a deep determination that burned behind her ribs. She started documenting her journey on a private Instagram account. Photos of gym sessions, protein smoothies, and daily affirmations filled her feed. She shared her scars, not just the physical ones, but the emotional wreckage too. Strangers found her, women battling illness, heartbreak, or both. They messaged her thanking her for being brave. Months passed and her following grew. Cindy didn't care about fame, but with every message she received, she realized she was helping others just by existing, loudly, unapologetically. The woman who once collapsed on the kitchen floor now stood tall with weights in both hands, sweat dripping, confidence pouring. One day, she was approached by a local photographer who had been following her journey online. He asked if she'd be open to doing a photo shoot. Nothing too flashy. He said just real images of a real woman who refused to break. Cindy hesitated, but something in her heart nudged her forward. She agreed. The shoot was done in natural light, no filters, no studio tricks. Cindy wore a simple white blouse, her new shoulder-length wig, styled in soft waves. When the photos came out, they were breathtaking, not because of glamour, but because they captured truth, strength, fire. The photographer posted one image with her permission. Within a week, it went viral. Local news picked it up. The headline read, "Woman battles cancer, then empowers thousands with her strength." Cindy's inbox flooded. Brands reached out. Modeling agencies called. She had never once considered herself a model, but now the world was telling her she could be one. One afternoon, while reviewing collaboration offers, Cindy received a message that made her hands freeze. It was from Alex's mother. She hadn't spoken to her since the breakup. The message was short but laced with emotion. "I saw your photo on the news. I just want you to know I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry for what my son did. You deserved better." Cindy didn't reply, not out of anger but peace. She no longer needed validation. She was no longer waiting for anyone to choose her. She had chosen herself. That evening, she stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom. She stared at her reflection and didn't flinch. No sadness, no pain, just a calm, powerful presence. The woman in the mirror wasn't broken. She was reborn. And far away in a glass condo overlooking the city, Alex saw her face again, this time on a billboard. Cindy stood in the center of a busy studio, camera lights flashing around her. The photographer gave instructions, but she hardly needed them. Her confidence flowed naturally now. Each pose, each glance, told a story of survival, power, and grace. The girl who once doubted her own worth had become a woman whose presence demanded attention. After the shoot ended, Cindy walked out into the sunlight, breathing in the city, air like it was her first breath. Her phone buzzed. Another brand wanted to collaborate. Another talk show wanted her story. She was becoming more than just a survivor. She was a symbol. Her social media soared past 1 million followers. But Cindy never lost sight of why she started. Every night she replied to messages from women who were still in the dark, still hurting, still doubting themselves. She wasn't just modeling clothes. She was modeling resilience. Then came the text. It was a simple message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's me." She stared at it. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She deleted the message without replying. But Alex wasn't done. The next day, he showed up outside her apartment. She was coming home from the gym when she saw him leaning against the wall wearing a black jacket and that same look of conflicted charm. He once used to win her heart, but it didn't work anymore. Cindy stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, eyes steady. "I saw the billboard," he said. "You look amazing." "What do you want, Alex?" she asked flatly. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck. "I made a mistake." "A mistake?" Cindy repeated slowly. "You left me when I was dying. I didn't know how to handle it," he said. "I was scared. I was weak. Mia isn't who I thought she was. She's gone now. Took the money, left a mess. I miss you." Cindy almost laughed. He looked so lost, so pathetic. The man who once walked out of their home without a glance, back now stood in front of her like a child who lost his favorite toy. But she wasn't that toy anymore. She was something rare, something untouchable. She stepped closer, just enough so he could see her eyes clearly. "I don't hate you, Alex," she said. "That would take too much energy. But I don't love you either. Not anymore. The woman you left behind doesn't exist. I buried her, and I'm not inviting ghosts back into my life." Alex looked down, shame clouding his face. "Please, just lunch maybe. 1 hour, talk." Cindy smiled softly. "I spent nights begging for your time, for your help, for your loyalty. You gave it to someone else. Now I give my time to people who earn it." She turned and walked past him. Her heels echoed on the pavement like victory drums. Alex didn't follow. That night, Cindy posted a photo of herself in a black dress, standing on a rooftop, looking over the city skyline. The caption was simple: "Some people lose diamonds while chasing stones." The post exploded. Thousands of women shared it, commented on it, told their own stories under hers. It wasn't about Alex anymore. It was about all the Alexes in the world, and all the Cindys who found themselves again. In his dark apartment, Alex scrolled through the comments with bloodshot eyes. Mia had left a month ago, with everything she could carry. He was alone, broke, empty. And everywhere he turned, he saw Cindy. But the world didn't pity him. It celebrated her. Cindy wasn't just healed. She had become untouchable. Cindy stood backstage at a fashion charity gala, organized for cancer awareness. The same disease that had once nearly broken her was now the very reason she was being celebrated. Organizers invited her, not just to walk the runway, but to speak. The lights were bright. The audience, full of powerful people from magazines, medical foundations, and media. But Cindy was calm. She had earned this. Her stylist adjusted the hem of her silver dress as she stood, tall, poised, and focused. The crowd chattered beyond the curtains, but she heard none of it. Her heart was set on something bigger than applause. She was walking for every woman who had been told they weren't enough, for every patient who had lost hair, hope, or love, for the version of herself who once cried alone on the cold bathroom floor. As she stepped onto the runway, the crowd rose to its feet, not because of fame, not because of beauty, but because of presence. She glided forward each step, echoing power and freedom. Her face was serene. Her body moved with purpose. She reached the end of the runway and stood there for a moment, letting the cameras flash, letting the moment breathe. When the walk ended, she changed into a simple black suit for the speech. She stood at the podium under soft white light. Her voice, steady and smooth, filled the room. "There was a time I thought my life had ended. When cancer hit, I lost more than my health. I lost my husband. I lost my sense of self. But pain has a strange way of opening doors. You learn to rebuild, not because you're fearless, but because you have no other choice." The room was silent. Every word landed like a seed in soil. I stand here not as a model, but as proof that scars can be beautiful. That loss doesn't have to be the end of your story. That sometimes rock bottom is the beginning of something extraordinary. Applause thundered through the room. Some people stood, some wiped tears. Cindy simply smiled, not proud in the shallow sense, but fulfilled. She had taken her pain and built something that mattered. After the gala, offers poured in. Book deals, documentary proposals, more fashion campaigns. Cindy's name was on magazine covers, beside supermodels and activists. But none of it made her arrogant. She stayed grounded, visited hospitals, mentored young women going through chemo, sent handwritten notes to fans. Meanwhile, Alex watched. Her rise like a man watching a fire. He started grow beyond control. He saw her on TV in waiting rooms. He saw her in the paper at coffee shops. People talked about her with admiration, using words like brave, inspiring, unstoppable. He tried to tell himself it didn't matter, that she would fade, but deep inside, He knew he had lost something rare. Mia had moved on quickly. She had taken what she wanted and disappeared. Alex tried contacting her once, but her number was no longer active. Friends avoided him. His career was stalled. His apartment was silent. He thought of Cindy every day, but knew he had no right to reach out again. Cindy never looked back. She moved into a new place. Bigger, brighter, closer to the city. She filled it with plants, artwork, and soft jazz in the mornings. She began painting again, something she had abandoned years ago. Her art sold online, gaining attention for its raw emotional texture. One evening, while cleaning out an old storage box, she found a photo from her wedding day. Her and Alex smiling under the sun, holding hands surrounded by friends. She stared at it for a long moment, then placed it in the fireplace. The photo curled in the flames, the smoke carrying away, the last thread of a love that had died long ago. She didn't cry. She didn't smile either. She simply turned around and walked back into the living room, where her future was already waiting. Alex sat alone in a dimly lit bar, staring into a half-empty glass of whiskey. The noise around him felt distant. Laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses all blurred into a haze. He looked tired, older than he was. His shirt wrinkled his eyes, sunken from nights without sleep. Every sip of alcohol numbed the edges of his regret, but never erased them. The bartender changed the TV channel. A new segment came on. Cindy's face appeared. She was being interviewed on a morning show. The caption read, "From abandoned to empowered." Her smile lit up the screen. Her posture calm, strong, unshakable. Alex froze. The bartender noticed his reaction. "She's something, huh?" he said, pointing at the screen. "Real power in that one." Alex nodded silently and turned away. He remembered the day he left. How Cindy stood silently at the door. No tears, no pleading, just disappointment. He had convinced himself she'd never recover, that he deserved more, that Mia was excitement and Cindy was burden. But he was wrong. Mia was shallow and self-serving. Cindy was gold, and he'd thrown her away. He had watched her transformation like a ghost outside. A window. Powerless, he had tried to replace her, but no one came close. Her silence was louder than any words. Her success made his failure echo deeper. One night, Alex opened a drawer filled with old photos. Among them, he found a letter Cindy had once written. It was short but beautiful, a note she left him during their first year of marriage. "Whatever happens, wherever life takes us, I'll never stop choosing you." He stared at the words until they blurred. He knew he had ruined the one person who truly loved him without conditions, and now she was untouchable. Meanwhile, Cindy was backstage, preparing for another keynote event. This time in a different city, with thousands of people attending. She wore a sleek blue suit, her hair styled elegantly, her face glowing with quiet power. As she walked onto the stage, people stood clapping before she even spoke. Her story had spread across the country, not just because of tragedy, but because of triumph. She didn't market pain, she embodied healing. After the event, she met a man named Ryan. He was part of the organizing team. Polite, smart, calm. They talked briefly about her speech, then later about art and books and travel. He didn't know her from the media. He knew her from her words, her essence. They exchanged contacts. No pressure, no sparks forced, just mutual respect. Cindy smiled more than she expected that night. That same evening, Alex sent another message. "I miss us. I miss you." Cindy saw the notification, but didn't open it. She deleted it with one swipe and went back to her painting. She was working on a canvas filled with deep reds and silvers. It was bold, chaotic, and strangely beautiful. Just like her journey, that weekend she visited her childhood home. Her parents welcomed her with warm hugs and tears. They had followed her rise from a distance, unsure when or how to reach out. But now they embraced her, not as a daughter in pain, but as a woman reborn. Her mother whispered as they hugged, "I always knew you were made for more than survival." Cindy stayed up late that night, staring at the stars through her old bedroom window. The sky hadn't changed, but she had. Back in his apartment, Alex sat in darkness again. No messages, no job leads, no laughter. He scrolled through Cindy's latest post, a photo of her holding hands with children at a cancer charity event. She looked joyful, free, fulfilled. He whispered her name once, like a prayer that had no answer. But Cindy was already far ahead. The morning sun spilled through the tall windows of Cindy's art studio. Paintings lined the walls, vibrant pieces, full of movement, emotion, and unspoken stories. She moved between them in a soft robe, coffee in hand, humming to music that played low in the background. Her life now was full, but peaceful. Her heart no longer beat with rage or bitterness. It beat with purpose. She had just returned from a cancer survivor's retreat, where she led workshops on self-worth and identity. Dozens of women had gathered from across the country and listened to her speak, not as a celebrity, but as someone who had walked through the same fire and emerged stronger. She didn't just tell them to believe, she showed them how to rebuild. Her mornings were slower now. No rush, no expectations, just intention. That day, she had a meeting with a major fashion house. They were launching a new campaign that focused on inner strength and beauty, without the filter of perfection. They wanted Cindy to be the face, not because she looked like every other model, but because she didn't. The meeting went smoothly. The creative director admired her poise and clarity. He told her something that stayed with her. You're not just selling clothes. You're giving women permission to feel powerful again. Later that evening, Cindy stopped by a bookstore. As she browsed through the poetry section, a familiar voice called her name softly. She turned and saw Ryan, the man from the event weeks earlier. He looked surprised but happy to see her. They walked through the aisles, chatting easily about books, art, and life. He wasn't like most people she met since her rise. He didn't fawn over her or speak in rehearsed admiration. He was honest, curious, calm. They shared coffee in the store cafe and lost track of time. When she returned home that night, Cindy sat by the window, holding a cup of tea, watching the city lights blink like stars. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Alex. I saw your new campaign. I can't stop thinking about what we had. I wish I could undo everything. She placed the phone down face down this time, not even bothering to read the full message. She had already forgiven him in her own way, not for his sake, but for her freedom. But forgiveness didn't mean access. The next day, she received an invitation to speak at an international summit for women leaders. Cindy stared at the envelope and felt a deep wave of calm pride. Her story was no longer confined to one city. It was reaching beyond borders. Her pain had become a bridge, not a barrier. Alex, meanwhile, spiraled further into his own regret. After losing his job and burning bridges with friends, he found himself working at a small tech store, barely making rent. Every day he passed advertisements of Cindy, her image plastered on buses, billboards and magazines. It was like the universe had chosen to remind him at every corner of what he let go. He thought about showing up at her event uninvited, of sending flowers, of writing a long apology. But deep down, he knew nothing would change the truth. He had walked away when she needed him most, and she had risen without him. Cindy didn't need revenge in the traditional sense. Her growth, her glow, her peace were louder than any scream. She had taken abandonment and turned it into acceleration. What was meant to destroy her became the foundation she stood on. One night while preparing for the summit, she looked at herself in the mirror, not searching for flaws, but recognizing strength. Her body bore scars, but her soul wore armor. She no longer lived in the shadow of what was lost. She walked fully in what she had gained. The summit was held in Geneva. The venue stood tall and modern, its glass walls reflecting the sky, as if reaching for something higher. Cindy arrived in a cream-colored suit, poised, elegant and ready. Security led her through a maze of corridors, until she reached the speaker's lounge. Inside were women from all over the world, activists, entrepreneurs, survivors, each carrying stories carved from struggle. When Cindy's turn came to speak, the hall was packed. Journalists lined the back row. Cameras rolled quietly as thousands waited in silence. She stood at the podium and paused for a moment, taking in the weight of the moment. Then she began. I came here, not because I won, but because I lost. I lost my health, my marriage, my sense of direction. But loss isn't the end. Sometimes it's the doorway to something greater. She shared her journey without bitterness, only truth. She spoke about the nights alone on the hospital floor, about watching the person she loved walk away, about the silence that followed. And then she spoke of rebuilding, of rediscovering joy, of standing in front of the mirror and deciding to love herself again, even when the world didn't. The audience was still as stone. Then they rose. The applause was thunderous, long and alive. Cindy stepped off stage into the arms of strangers, who were no longer strangers. Women hugged her with tears in their eyes. Some whispered thank you, others simply held her hand. After the summit ended, Cindy stayed in Europe for a few days. She walked through quiet streets, visited museums, drank coffee by rivers. It was the first time in years she traveled not to escape, but to explore. Her soul felt light, not because her past was gone, but because it no longer chained her. While sitting in a small Parisian cafe, her phone rang. It was an unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. A few minutes later, a message came in. I know you won't answer, but I'm sorry, truly. I've lost everything. I hope you're happy now. It was Alex again. She read the message once and set the phone aside. There was no anger in her, just clarity. His sorrow was no longer hers to carry. She didn't even feel pity, just distance, as if he was a chapter in a book she had already closed. Later that night, Ryan called. They talked for an hour about everything and nothing. He asked about the summit. She asked about his work. They laughed. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady and kind. Exactly what her soul needed. When Cindy returned home the next week, her apartment felt warmer than ever. Plants bloomed. Sunlight poured through the windows. Her studio was full of new canvases, waiting to be touched by her brush. She unpacked her luggage and sat on the balcony watching the skyline. She didn't feel like someone who had climbed to the top. She felt like someone who had come home to herself. The version of her that used to beg for love now walked in abundance. The woman who once prayed not to die now lived fully in each breath. Cindy was invited to appear on a globally broadcasted talk show, not because she was trending, but because her story had reached deeper than algorithms. She was no longer just a model or a survivor. She was a movement, a voice for the forgotten, a mirror for the broken. The set was bright, clean, modern. Cameras moved around her carefully as the host smiled warmly and introduced her. The audience applauded before she even spoke. Her presence carried weight now, not from fame, but from authenticity. When asked about her journey, Cindy didn't glamorize it. There were days I didn't want to wake up, days I hated my reflection. But there were also days I held myself like a friend and said not yet. One more step, one more breath. The host leaned in curious. Do you ever think about the people who left you during your hardest time? Cindy paused. Her gaze softened, but stayed steady. They gave me the greatest gift. They left. And when they did, I had no choice but to meet the real me. She was buried under fear and doubt. But she was always there, waiting. The audience fell silent for a moment. Then applause erupted. Raw, honest, real. Backstage after the show, Cindy sat in her dressing room, wiping off her makeup slowly. She looked at herself in the mirror and felt nothing but peace. She no longer felt the need to prove anything. Not to the world, not to Alex, not even to herself. Her phone lit up again. Another message from Alex. You've become everything I ever dreamed of. I just wish I had stayed. I wish I could be the man you needed. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened a message from a young woman. who had been following her journey. "I start chemo next week. I'm scared, but seeing you gives me hope. Thank you for being brave." Cindy replied immediately. Her energy was no longer wasted on the past. It was poured into purpose. That weekend, she hosted an art exhibition. Every piece was inspired by a different phase of her healing. There were canvases filled with rage, some with grief, others with light and joy. People came from all over to see them. Some cried, some stood in silence, some wrote letters and left them at the door. Alex came too. He didn't announce himself. He stood quietly in the corner, wearing a plain shirt, trying not to be noticed. When he saw her walk into the room, laughter in her voice, confidence in her steps, he froze. She didn't see him. Or maybe she did, but chose not to acknowledge it. She walked past him, smiling at guests, thanking them for coming. She stood beside a painting called Reborn. It was a swirl of dark blue and gold. Strong, beautiful, limitless. Someone asked her what it meant. "It means I didn't just survive. I created something out of the ashes." Alex left before the exhibition ended. He walked into the cold night and realized this was the last time he'd ever be that close to her again. Cindy stayed until every guest left. She stood in the empty gallery, surrounded by her journey in color and shape. She wasn't haunted by memories anymore. She had turned them into art. And when she finally stepped out into the night breeze, it didn't chill her. It welcomed her. Months passed, and Cindy's life kept blooming. Her name was now tied to foundations, scholarships, and global campaigns. She had appeared on magazine covers, not for her beauty, but for her resilience. She was invited to speak at universities, where students hung on every word. In airports, strangers approached her just to say thank you. And yet, through all the spotlight, Cindy remained grounded. She still woke early, still made tea before the world stirred, still painted in silence when her thoughts grew loud. Her walls weren't covered with awards, but with letters from people whose lives she had touched. Survivors, artists, abandoned mothers, lost daughters. Each one reminded her why she started. She didn't chase love. She didn't need to. But love found her anyway. Ryan had become a quiet presence in her life. Supportive, never overbearing, always respectful. He didn't try to save her. He didn't ask her to shrink. He simply stood beside her without fear. He listened, he stayed, and slowly something real began to grow. One morning they shared coffee on her balcony, watching the clouds shift above the skyline. He looked at her not with desire, but admiration. "You don't wear your scars, Cindy. You wield them." She smiled, not out of pride, but recognition. She had finally been seen for who she truly was. Meanwhile, Alex was slipping further into the background of his own life. He moved into a smaller apartment, took on jobs that barely paid. No one mentioned Cindy to him anymore, not because they forgot her, but because she had risen so far. He no longer belonged in the conversation. He often sat in silence, wondering when exactly he lost her. Was it the moment he chose Mia, or the first time he looked away from Cindy when she cried? Or was it the moment he decided her illness was too heavy for his weak hands? Whatever it was, he knew he would carry that regret until his final breath. But Cindy wasn't thinking about him anymore. She was planning her next project, a foundation that supported abandoned cancer patients who had no family or partner to stay. Through their journey, she hired a team of passionate women, many of whom had once reached out to her for hope. Now they worked beside her, building something greater than revenge. It wasn't about getting back at anyone. It was about giving back to everyone who had ever felt invisible. One evening, she stood alone on the rooftop of a hotel in Tokyo, watching the city lights flicker like stars. She breathed in the air, closed her eyes, and smiled. Not because life was perfect, but because it was hers now, completely. The wind danced around her, and she whispered softly to herself, "I didn't just survive, I lived."